Chapter 6. The driver left Doggy and me on the porch side of the screen door. I watched him leave. I re-gripped my laundry bag and slung it over my shoulder. I pushed open the heavy front door. The room smelled musty and old. I stood in the middle of the dark front hall and listened to the door creak as it closed behind me. There were no other sounds. There were 3 doors off the hall and a twisting staircase. Halfway up the carpeted stairs was a small round window that let in a long stream of sunlight. It ended at my feet. I was afraid to move any farther. I heard a squeak from the stairs. Someone was coming down. "Jennings Birch?" a cold and distant voice asked as the figure reached the window and stopped. I couldn't speak. "Are you Jennings Birch?" she asked. There was annoyance in her voice as she started down the last section of steps. "Yes, ma'am." "Yes, sister," she snapped. "Follow me." She brushed past me and pushed open one of the 3 doors. I followed her. "What do you have there?" she asked from over her shoulder. "Well, I had a laundry bag with some things." "I don't mean the bag." "Oh, this is Doggy. He's my friend." I held him up to her back. "What do you intend to do with it?" Nothing. He's just my friend, that's all." She quickened her pace through the maze of hallways. I quickened mine. She stopped and opened the door to a dormitory. We went in. The room looked familiar. There were 2 rows of metal beds, one on each side of the room. A small chest separated each of them. At the far end was the bathroom. The light wasn't on, but I could see the tiles in the dark shadows. The windows were large and barred. She led me to bed number 17 and pointed to the cabinet alongside of it. "Put that thing in there and leave it there," she ordered. "Under no circumstances are you to sleep with it. Do you understand me?" I fought back the tears as I placed my little friend in this wooden chamber. "Do you understand?" she shouted. I jumped. I nodded my head to show I understood. She slapped me hard across the face. "When I speak, I expect to be answered." "Yes, sister," I cried. "Yes, what?" "I understand," I said. I held my stinging face and wiped my eyes and nose on my sleeve. Sister Frances at the Home of the Angels was nice compared to this sister. She was tall and thin. Her face was bright red with a vein that ran up from her temple to her forehead. I was sure the headpiece surrounding her face was the cause of her redness. She talked with her teeth clenched tightly together. She frightened me. She led me from the dormitory to a playroom, pushed me through the door, and closed it behind me. The room was empty. I sat near the door on one of the many small wooden chairs scattered all around the room. The feeling of wanting to cry was overwhelming, but I fought it off. I swallowed hard and forced my eyes wide open. The room was large and bright. There were 2 patched-up screen doors that could open out onto a grassless yard. Every so often, a swirl of wind would lift a small puff of dust off the yard and carry it away. There were 4 long tables, 2 on each side of the room. The shelves along each wall were filled with games and playthings. The floor was wooden and well-worn. I heard a strange sound coming from the hallway. It was low at first, but then it grew louder. I couldn't figure out what it was. It kept getting louder and louder. It pulsated like a heartbeat. Suddenly I knew what it was. It was the thunderous steps of all the kids marching down the hallway. The door opened and all the kids began to file in. The uniform line turned to chaos. Most of them ran for the screen doors, throwing them open. They dashed out into the grassless yard, raising whole clouds of dust. A few kids took games from the shelves to play with on the tables. I stayed where I was. I hadn't been noticed, and I was glad. I stayed in the safety of the chair for the entire afternoon. Tried to figure out who might be number 16. Naturally, I picked the kid with the biggest and the funniest looking ears. The sun began to dip down below some of the trees on the far side of the play yard. "All right, children, dinner time," the nun called out. She slapped her hands together. I couldn't believe my ears. She actually sounded nice. This one was a fat roly-poly nun with bright red cheeks and a sweet smile. As the kids started forming lines, I approached her. "Sister," I spoke with caution. "Yes," she said. She smiled. I'm new here, sister. I don't know where I'm supposed to be." "Well, we'll take care of that. What's your number?" 17. "Stevie, you're number 16, aren't you?" she asked one of the boys on the line. "Yes, Sister Ann Catherine." "There, son, stand behind Stevie," she told me. "And Stevie," she called the boy, "would you see that this boy is okay?" "Yes, sister." "What's your name?" she asked. Jennings. What's your first name? That is my first name, sister. All right, Jennings, enjoy your dinner. Gosh, you sure sounded nice. I stood behind Stevie. He didn't have big funny ears. In fact, his ears were kind of normal. He was about a half-foot taller than me and skinny. He had dirty blonde hair that stuck straight up, sort of like a brush. Sister Anne Catherine clapped her hands together for the second time, and the line started moving. It crossed my mind to tell her about the little clicker, but then I thought better of it. I really hated that little clicker. The dining room tables were laid out in long rows. There were about a dozen kids at each table, boys on one side of the room and girls on the other. I played with a boiled frankfurter and some stiff wax-like beans. By the looks on the faces of the other kids and the unfinished food in front of them, it was obvious that everyone shared a dislike for the tasteless supper. My eyes met those of the boy across from me. He had red hair that stuck up like a rooster and 2 large front teeth. He smiled. I smiled back. He quickly lost his smile and looked in both directions for the whereabouts of the nuns. When he realized he was safe, he smiled again. His actions told me the rules were the same here. No smiling in the dining room. We were marched back to the playroom by the nun with the cold eyes and the popping veins. I took a seat at one of the tables near the doorway and watched. None of the kids went into the yard this time. I think maybe the door was locked. I kept my eyes on Stevie. I wasn't sure what the next move would be, and I didn't want to get into any trouble. I figured watching him and doing whatever he did would be the safest thing. Look! One of the kids yelled out, a firefly! Many of the kids went over to the screen doors to look out. I stretched my neck up to try to see over them. I'd never seen a fly on fire before and was anxious to see one. I got up and slowly made my way around the side of the room toward the screen doors. I reached a group of kids with their hands cupped around their eyes and their faces pressed against the door. I tried to see over them. Fireflies, the boy with the rooster-like hair said to me. He was waiting for a spot so he could see them too. I never saw a fly on fire, I said. They're not on fire, he laughed. They just light up, that's all. Didn't you ever see a firefly? Stevie asked. He was standing behind me. No, I answered. Hey, move over. He pushed some of the kids away from the door. Look, he said. He pointed to the spot he had just cleared for me. I stepped up to the screen door and pressed my face against it. I cupped my hands around my eyes to adjust to the darkness. Suddenly I saw them. First a slight glow, and then they went dark. Wow, I said. How'd they do that? They got bulbs in their tails, someone said. No, they don't, stupid, Stevie said. They got some stuff on their tails that glows in the dark, like those statues, you know? Yeah, those plastic statues. I know. Wow, I said. I was held captive by the blinking lights. What's your name? Stevie asked. Jennings, I said into the screen door. What's your first name? That is my first name. It's a funny name, he said. By the way he said it, I'm sure he didn't mean to hurt my feelings. My name is Stevie. I came away from the door and shook his hand. Yeah, I know. I heard Sister Anne Catherine call you Stevie. Are you a lifer? He asked. No, a part-timer. Yeah, me too. Are you tired? Yes. Come on, I'll take you to the dorm. I followed Stevie. When we reached the dormitory, he went to his cabinet and I went to mine. I reached in for my laundry bag to get my pajamas, but I found Doggy's nose instead. I crouched on the floor to talk to him. Hi, Doggy, I whispered. I gave him time to answer. I'm sorry you have to be locked up in here. I kissed him and held his fur to my cheek. Don't let Sister Barbara catch you with them, Stevie said. He was standing behind me. Sister Barbara, is she the one? He twisted up the corners of his mouth and nodded his head yes. I didn't even have to finish what I was saying. He knew whatever I was going to say was right. She's mean, he said, real mean. He left for the bathroom and I followed. The room looked very much like the one at the Home of the Angels. It had the same kind of numbered hooks and the same uncovered toilet bowls. We washed and brushed. I was at my hook changing when Stevie pulled off his shirt. His back was scarred and torn. Some of the cuts were new. They were still oozing blood. I cringed. What happened? Nothing, he said. He continued to change in silence. I didn't ask again. The lights were out and the room was quiet. Only a single lamp burned at the far end of the room, at the night nun's desk. No one was there. I tried to adjust my eyes to the darkness of this new place, but I couldn't. I looked toward the window, but saw nothing. The night sky was so dark, and there were no street lamps outside. I heard someone cough and someone else sniffle. If I couldn't see, I thought I'd listen. I heard someone crying. I heard a sound I'd never heard before. It was coming from outside. It was sort of like a whistle, a broken up whistle. It must be some wild animal. I was frightened. I sat up and looked around. There was still nothing but the single lamp burning, and no nun. I slipped from my bed to the floor. I opened my cabinet. It squeaked. I scrunched up my face and shut my eyes as I fully opened the door. I removed Doggy, reclosed the door, and got back into bed. "Hi, Doggy," I whispered. "If I hid you at the home of the angels, I can hide you here." I kissed him. I hugged him once or twice before sliding him under my pillow. I lay back and felt his nose. I wasn't frightened anymore. Breakfast at St. Teresa's was an adventure. Each kid was served a metal cup of hot cocoa. It was much too hot to drink, so you had to let it cool. When it did, a thick film covered the top. The idea was to get the film off without spilling the cocoa on the white tablecloth. I watched some of the others to see how they'd do it. They didn't. They just let it sit there and didn't bother to drink it at all. Stevie poked my arm. "Watch," he said with his eyes. I watched. He took the spoon from his prunes and licked it off. Then he held the spoon over the top of the cocoa. He gently lowered it. When he reached the bottom of the cup, he pulled it straight out. The spoon had the film wrapped all around it. He drank the cocoa. I smiled. I slapped my mouth and looked around. I was safe. Nobody had seen me smile. I followed Stevie's silent instructions and did the same with my spoon. It worked. After breakfast, the lifers went to class. The rest of us were marching into the playroom, where the screen doors were open. I walked across the grassless yard to a spot near a tree. I sat down. The yard was very wide and long. It was bounded on two sides by very tall trees, and on the others by the building and a small creek. I sat by the tree watching the other kids run around. The boy with the rooster hair approached me. "Hi, Jennings." "Hi, it's Jennings," I said. Jennings. My name's Bobby, but everyone calls me Rooster," he laughed. "I guess I look like a rooster. Do you want to play tag?" "Okay." I no sooner spoke than he hit me across the head. "You're it!" he shouted, and disappeared into a cloud of dust. I sprang to my feet. I wasn't too sure who was playing, but it wasn't all that hard to figure out. Anyone who ran as I approached was playing. I chased after quite a few kids, but couldn't catch anyone. Then I remembered what I used to do when I played with my brothers and couldn't catch any of them. I fell down. I didn't move. The laughter that first erupted quieted. A few of the boys approached me. I stayed still. "Are you all right?" one of them asked. I didn't answer. I lay motionless, my face toward the ground. "Hey, kid, are you hurt?" another asked as he drew closer to me. When he was within reach, I shot out my hand and struck his foot. "You're it!" I shouted and sprang to my feet. The whole yard broke into laughter, all but the boy I tagged, of course. We played tag for quite some time. I didn't get tagged again, and I was glad. I knew the possum trick wouldn't work twice. The game began to peter out. Some of the kids drifted off to do other things. I sat by the tree. Stevie sat next to me. "As soon as we catch our breath," he said, "we'll go and wash up. If we go into lunch like this," he raised his eyebrows, "Sister Barbara will kill us." Our faces, hands, and arms were filthy. We had dark rings around our necks. We reached the sinks. "Whatever you do in this bathroom," he started to say. "Don't make a mess," we said together, and then laughed. "You been in many of these homes?" he asked. "Just one other, Home of the Angels in Brooklyn." "I've never been to that one. This is my 5th. They ain't so bad as some others I've been in." "Are the rules any different here?" I asked. "Nah, they're all the same. Keep your mouth shut and don't pee in bed." "I ain't done that in years." "What are you in for?" he asked. "My mother's sick." "Is she gonna die?" I don't think so. I hope not." "Well, my mother's dead. She died a long time ago, and my father, he's a drunken bum. He's the one who gave me this." He whirled around and revealed his back to me. "He gets real drunk and beats me up. The neighbors call the cops and they take him away. They bring me to these places. It ain't fair." He mumbled. "I guess the worst of it, I hate him." "How long do you stay here?" until they let him out. Then he comes and gets me. He promises he ain't gonna do it no more, and then wham, I'm right back in one of these places. It ain't fair. We finished washing or wiping down the sinks when Stevie started talking to himself. One of these days he ain't gonna hit me no more. One of these days I'm gonna... He didn't finish his words, but he nearly rubbed the porcelain off the sink. He rubbed so hard. He threw his towel from where he was standing and landed on his hook. Pretty good, I said. I threw my towel. It landed on the floor in front of me. How old are ya? He asked. I'm 9. Well, I'm 10. I'm the toughest kid in here. If you got any trouble, see me. He stuck his thumb in his chest to emphasize his last word. Stevie was the butch of St. Teresa's, but it didn't bother me. I liked him. He was angry and bitter about his father, but he was also sad and alone and hurt. I don't mean because he's in this place we're all sad and alone being here. I mean because it's inside him. When we leave here, we won't be sad and alone no more. But I think Stevie will be. What bothered me the most was the thought that Mom might die. I hadn't thought about it until Stevie said it. It scared me. After lunch, Rooster, Stevie, and I went down by the creek to catch some frogs. Are there any alligators in here? Rooster asked. A few, Stevie said, but not too many. Mostly snakes. Snakes? I jumped back from the edge of the creek. They're just the little ones. They don't eat much. Oh, gosh, I said. This place is crawling with wild animals. Just last night I heard one. Oh, yeah? Rooster said, what kind of animal? I don't know, but he was a big one. What did he sound like? Stevie asked. Well, let's see. It was like a whistle, but it was all broken up. Sort of like this. I made the sound as best I could. Stevie started to laugh, so did Rooster. What's so funny? That wasn't a wild animal, Stevie laughed. That was a cricket. A cricket? Like Jiminy Cricket? Yeah, but these ones ain't got no clothes on, Stevie said. Stevie, Rooster, and I palled along together. Nobody spoke about friends, but that was okay with me. I remember how it felt when I left Mark. I didn't want to feel that way anymore. It hurt. Stevie taught Rooster and me how to climb trees without scraping our knees, and how to make a frog jump. At night, I took Doggy from the cabinet to bed with me. For the first few minutes, we would talk about the day and about how I felt. I loved Doggy so much I needed him. One morning, Doggy wasn't under my pillow, but in my arms. I quickly sat up and looked around. Sister Barbara wasn't there. I was safe. I jumped down from the bed and stuck him in the cabinet. I was about to leave for the bathroom to get dressed when Sister Ann Catherine danced past me, singing. She always danced and sang in the mornings. I listened to her song. Well, if I had a doggy cute as him, I wouldn't sleep with him under my pillow. La-di-da-da-da-dillo. She laughed. She knew I had Doggy, and she wasn't mad at me. That made me happy, but I had to be more careful. If Sister Barbara ever found him, she'd kill me. Worse than that, she might take him away from me. I was in the yard sitting by the tree with Rooster after breakfast. We were waiting for Stevie. I'll go and find him, Rooster said. Okay. Rooster walked off. He dragged his feet every step of the way just to raise as much dust as he could. We all did that when we crossed the yard. It was fun. As the dust began to settle, I saw Stevie coming from the house. Did you see Rooster? I shouted. He didn't answer me. He reached me and dropped down. Did you see Rooster? He went to look for you. Again, he didn't answer me. What's wrong? None, he said. I want to run away. Run away? Where? I don't know. Anywhere. What's the matter, Stevie? He told me my father was coming for me today. He mumbled. I ain't going with him no more. He toyed with the ground between his feet. I ain't gonna get hit no more. He got to his feet. I'll see ya, he said as he started to walk away. Wait! I scrambled to my feet. Where are you going? I caught up to him. There were tears on his cheeks. Stevie, where are you going? I'm leaving. I'm going where no one will find me. Where no one can hurt me no more. I'll see ya. But, didn't you ask me to go with you? I was just talking. I gotta go by myself. He stopped in his tracks and I almost ran into him. Hey, Jennings. He paused to look at me. I'll see ya. His eyes told me goodbye more than his words did. He turned and walked away alone. I watched him walk into the trees. I stood watching the trees for a long time. The tops of them swayed gently in the morning breeze. Stevie was gone. I sat down where I was and stared at the trees. Didn't matter whether you said the word friend or not. If you felt friend, it was all the same. It hurt. Rooster came back. He told me he couldn't find Stevie. I didn't tell him what had happened. I didn't tell him Stevie was gone. I told him I didn't feel very well and didn't feel much like playing. He left to play with someone else. At lunch and dinner, I stared at Stevie's empty chair. I wondered where he was and if he was afraid. I would be afraid, very afraid. I went right to bed after dinner. I took Doggy under the covers with me and hugged him. I didn't have to tell him Stevie was gone. He just sort of knew. I kissed him a few times and tucked him under my pillow. I fell asleep. I was awakened in the middle of the night by someone lifting my pillow and removing Doggy. I opened my eyes, but it was too dark to see anything. Suddenly, Doggy was placed into my arms, and the hair on my forehead was brushed back. Somebody kissed me. I blinked my eyes into focus as a dark figure walked down the row of beds. It was Sister Anne Catherine. In the days that followed, Rooster and I played together, but it wasn't the same. We both missed Stevie, but neither of us said anything. It was better that way. Sister Anne Catherine continued to give me Doggy in the middle of the night, and the kiss. One morning, Sister Barbara brought a new boy over to chair number 16 and slammed him into it. His eyes were red. The dried tears on his cheeks were smeared and streaky. I guess he tried wiping them away with his dirty hands, but couldn't. He sat perfectly still. He didn't move. I knew how he felt and wanted to say something to him, but I couldn't. Even if I could, what would I say? Everything is going to be all right? I didn't know if everything was going to be all right. I didn't know anything. Sister Barbara poured him hot cocoa. Before he realized it was in a metal cup, he lifted it to drink and burned his hand. He dropped the cup on the table, spilled the cocoa across the white tablecloth. I jumped to my feet. "Sister, I spilled my cocoa," I yelled. I moved my cup in front of the new boy. Sister Barbara came at me like a wild animal. She slapped me hard across the ear and knocked me into the table. She grabbed my hair and pulled me over the chair. I fell to the floor. She grabbed the back of my shirt collar and dragged me toward the front of the room. As she dragged me across the uneven wooden floor, great and small splinters began ripping into all parts of my body. I screamed and cried, but the pain kept coming. She reached the front of the room and dropped me. She kicked me in the side, knocking my breath away. She opened a closet door and in one sweeping motion lifted me from the floor and dropped me in. She slammed the door. In the dark black silence of the dining room closet, I lay in one great heap of pain. I stayed as motionless as possible for what seemed forever. My face was pressed hard against the wooden floor. I felt moistness all over me. It could be sweat or blood. I wasn't sure. I began to feel around at my hurt body. Each time I touched a jagged piece of floor sticking from my body, I winced in pain. My pants were soaking wet, but not from blood. I had wet my pants. The pee began to burn some of the cuts on my legs. I tried to find some comfortable position, but I couldn't. No matter what I did, something else hurt. I closed my eyes and made believe I was hugging Doggy. His fur was soft and warm. He felt so good to be near. He was my friend, and I loved him. I fell asleep. I was awakened when someone tried to move me. The sharp pain shot across my side as a piece of wooden floor was pushed into me. I screamed. "Shh, baby, poor baby, you'll be all right," Sister Anne Catherine whispered. She and a nurse lifted me onto a blanket or something. They carried me from the room. I was taken to a room and placed down on a soft bed, but it didn't matter. The splinters still worked their way deeper into me, and I cried. The nurse gave me a needle, while Sister Anne Catherine sat alongside me and gently held my hand. The nurse began to cut away my clothes with scissors. Sleep closed over me like the dark closet. I awoke the next morning. I was alone. The sun peered in through the window. I turned a little in the bed to relieve a pain in my shoulder, and there alongside me was Doggy. "Oh, Doggy," I cried. I held him close against my face. "She hurt me, Doggy. She hurt me so much." "Good morning, Jennings. How do you feel?" Sister Anne Catherine asked as she pushed open the door. "I don't know, Sister." I wiped my eyes. She sat down. "Someone is here to say hello to you. Do you feel up to it?" "Yes, Sister." "Peter," she called out. The door pushed open and in came the boy who had spilled the cocoa. He came over to the bed and just stood there. His lip quivered as he tried to speak. He started to cry. Sister Anne Catherine pulled him down toward her and hugged him. "He wanted to thank you for taking the blame, but he's upset right now." It's okay, I said. I reached over and took his dangling hand. Hi, Peter. Hi, he said as he straightened up and wiped away his tears. Thank you. Do you play checkers, I asked. He nodded his head yes. Good, maybe we can play sometime. Well, not now. Jennings has to rest, Sister said. She took Peter to the door and let him out. Bye, he said as he left. Bye. Sister Ann Catherine put medicine on some of the cuts and rebandaged some of the others. She brought me some oatmeal and fed it to me. She gave Doggy a taste and I laughed. She came every day to fix the bandages and to read to me. Peter and Rooster came to play checkers and cards with me. No one at all mentioned Sister Barbara's name to me. I hated her. I stayed in the little hospital for 6 days. On the morning of the 7th day, the nurse laid some clothes on the bed and told me to put them on. I did. The pants and the shirt were both light brown. They were kind of nice, a lot better than my old stuff. I sat at the edge of the bed. You can go now, Jennings, she said. Go? Go where? Back to the dining room to have breakfast. You're all right now, you know. I was frightened. I didn't want to go back. I didn't ever want to see Sister Barbara again. Can I stay here? No, dear, this room is for sick people. Go and have a nice breakfast, all right? All right, I said. I gathered up Doggy under my arm and left. I went down the hall to the playroom. I pushed open the screen door and stepped out into the bright morning sunshine. I thought about Stevie. I knew what he felt the day he was supposed to go back to his father, the fear that grew inside of him, the one that reminded him of pain. I knew if he were afraid of running away, the fear of staying was greater. I headed for the same trees he headed for the day he decided not to go back. Doggy and I walked for hours. We had no idea where we were, but we kept walking. We wanted to get away from there. Are you hungry, Doggy? He said he was. Yeah, me too. Maybe you should have stayed for breakfast? He didn't think so. We passed a park with some swings and a slide. Hey, Doggy, want to go on the slide? He did. We played in the park for quite some time. The sun began to dip down below a row of buildings that bordered the park. We were tired and hungry. We decided to stay in the park to find some nice spot in the bushes where we could rest. There's a good bunch of bushes. What do you think? I asked. Doggy thought they were fine, so he slipped into the bushes. I lay down with Doggy and closed my eyes. I thought if we slept, we might not be so hungry. I was awakened by beeping horns. I stuck my head out of the bushes and saw a whole lot of cars and some buses. It was morning. I dusted off Doggy's fur and tucked him under my arm. We left the bushes and made our way toward the exit of the park. We gotta get a plan, Doggy. We gotta find out where we are, and most of all, we gotta get some food. He agreed. We passed a row of stores and some people. I saw a lady standing by the curb, waiting for a bus or something. I decided to ask her where I was. Excuse me, I smiled. Can you tell me where I am, please? Are you lost, little boy? You could say that. Where's your mother? She's resting someplace. Resting? Resting where? I'm not exactly sure. That's why I was asking you where I am. You see? Not exactly, but you're in Yonkers. Yonkers? I tapped my upper lip while I thought of what next to ask the nice lady. Is Yonkers in Brooklyn? No, she laughed. You're a long way from Brooklyn. Do you live in Brooklyn? No, not exactly. I live in the Bronx. Oh, well, you're not that far from the Bronx. Where in the Bronx do you live? 188th Street. 188th Street? How'd you get all the way up here? Well, it's a long story. Could you tell me which way is 188th Street? She pointed down the street in the direction of 188th Street. Thank you, ma'am, I said. But, Sonny, can I help you get there? Shouldn't I call your mother or somebody? No, thank you, I smiled again. She sure was a nice lady, wasn't she, Doggy? He said she was. We walked in the direction the lady had pointed out. We passed a lot more stores. One of them was a bakery. Wow, that smells good, doesn't it, Doggy? He thought it smelled great. I'll bet if we go around to the back, we'll find something to eat. He agreed. We ran around to the back of the bakery and found a whole bunch of brown paper bags. I went through them. Most of it was just old bags of flour and empty cans. Oh, look, I pulled up some potato peels and some bread. What do you think? He thought it was food. He was starving. Yeah, me too. I gave Doggy a taste of the bread, then ate the whole piece. We ate some of the potato peels and some more bread. The bread was much better than the potato peels. We left the alleyway and continued in the direction the lady had pointed. As we walked, we looked at the stores for another good one. We were still very hungry. Hey, kid! A man's voice called from behind me. I turned and saw a policeman just getting out of his car. Come here, son. I cautiously approached him. I was scared. I tightened my grip on Doggy. Yes, sir. What's your name, son? Stevie. Stevie what? I gulped. I didn't know Stevie's last name. Well, never mind, son. Come along. He extended his hand to me. I took his hand. He opened the front door of the police car and led me in. Doggy and I sat in the car while he went around to the other side and got in. I started to cry. Don't cry, son. I'm only going to give you a ride to the police station so we can find out who you are and take you home, all right? I couldn't speak. I was too frightened. I held Doggy very close to my chin and stretched my neck. I wanted to look out the window, but I couldn't see over the dashboard. A lady told me you were lost, he said. Oh gosh, I thought she wasn't such a nice lady after all. Well, we'll be there in a minute and we'll get you home. I knew that wasn't true, but I knew he didn't know that. We pulled up in front of the police station. It was a scary-looking place. The building was all brown stone and ugly. There were 2 large globe lamps, one on each side of the front door. The policeman held my hand as he led me from the car into the building. He pushed open the front door. The room was big. There was a great wooden desk behind a black handrail. It ran the entire length of the room. There were at least a dozen policemen going and coming through different doors around the room. Someone was typing somewhere, but I couldn't see who it was. I could only hear them. The walls were cracked and dirty. Hey, Sarge, Bob captured Dillinger, one of the policemen said. I looked around to see who this Dillinger person was, but I didn't see anybody. The policeman continued to hold my hand until we were in front of the giant desk. I think I got a runaway, Sarge, he said to the policeman behind the desk. He leaned over the desk and looked down at me. He was the only policeman in the room not wearing a hat. His hair was gray and parted in the middle. He put on a pair of glasses only to look at me. As soon as he saw me, he took them off. Hi, son, what's your name? Stevie, Sarge, his name is Stevie, the policeman said. No, it's not. Now, what's your name, son? Somehow this policeman named Sarge knew my name wasn't Stevie. Well, son? I was so frightened I couldn't answer him. I hugged Doggy a little closer and blinked back my tears. Sarge left the desk and came around to the front. He crouched down. Are you hungry? He asked. I shook my head no. He scratched Doggy's head. I'll bet your dog is hungry. Are you hungry, little fella? He asked Doggy. I moved Doggy's head up and down. I thought so. We'll take care of that in a jiffy. He stood up and shouted out some orders to a few of the policemen who were standing around. He sent one of them to get Doggy a hamburger. He crouched back down. Now, son, while we're waiting for the dog's hamburger, suppose you tell me his name. Doggy. Oh, Doggy. Now, why didn't I think of that? And what's your name, he asked me. Jennings. Now, that's better. And where do you live, Jennings? I hesitated. I didn't want to go back to St. Teresa's. The home of the angels. Home of the angels? He scratched his chin. In Brooklyn, I added. In Brooklyn, he said. Well. He placed a hand under each of my arms and lifted me and Doggy in one sweep onto the top of his high desk. I winced in pain as he pressed some of my splinter cuts. Are you all right? I nodded my head that I was. Let's see, he said as he lifted my shirt. Oh, my gosh, how did you get these? Splinters. Splinters? He lifted the front of my shirt. 2 other policemen standing near him leaned over to look. Okay, how'd you get them? He sounded angry. I didn't answer him. I was afraid to. All right, never mind, he said. He went around to the other side of his desk. The policeman who went for the hamburger came in. 1 hamburger coming up, he said. Sarge took the package from him. He unwrapped the hamburger and gave Doggy a bite. I think this is much too big for this little fella. Can you help him eat it? He asked. I nodded my head yes. He handed me the hamburger and a container of milk. I was starving. I gobbled down some of the hamburger and drank the milk. Sarge spoke quietly to one of the policemen and made a telephone call. "I know you're from St. Teresa's, son," he said. "It's written on your shirt." I pulled up my shirt collar to see, but I couldn't see anything. "It's in the back." I remembered the nurse had given me new clothes. I didn't know she put the home's name on them. "I know they hurt you there, son, and I know that's why you ran away, but you'll have to go back." My eyes filled with tears as I munched on the hamburger. Sarge came around to the front of me. "Now, son, I'm going to promise you something. I'm going to promise you nobody's going to hurt you ever again. Will you believe me?" He had been so kind to me, I believed him. I nodded my head yes. "Good." He wrote something on a piece of paper and stuck it in my shirt pocket. "That's my name, Sergeant Pierce Mager, and my phone number. If anybody tries to hurt you again, I want you to call me. Will you do that?" "Yes, sir," I said. "Oh, sir?" "Yes." "I thought your name was Sarge." "Well, everyone calls me Sarge. You can call me Sarge, too, if you'd like." He smiled. "Now finish your hamburger. I'm going to take you back myself. I got a few words for those people. We drove away in Sarge's car. "Now, how did you get the splinters?" I hesitated. "Don't be afraid," he said. "I just want to make sure you yell at the right person. I'll find out anyway." "Sister Barbara," I mumbled. She dragged me across the dining room floor. "All right," he said. He patted my leg with his hand. We entered the front gate of St. Teresa's. My heart pounded. He flipped a switch on his dashboard. "What's that?" I asked. "That's my dome light. It makes it look a little more scary." He winked. The police car drove up the dusty road to the front of the house and stopped. As I got out of the car, I hid Doggy behind my back. "What's the matter?" he asked. "Sister Barbara doesn't like Doggy." "Oh, she doesn't? Well, we'll see about that." He pushed open the screen door. We went into the dark hallway. "Wait here," he said. He pushed open a door marked office and went in. As I stood by the front door watching the red light from the police car flash across my face, I heard yelling coming from the office. A few minutes later, Sarge came out with Sister Barbara. I couldn't tell who was more red, him or her. His face softened as he crouched down near me. "Now, Jennings," he said, "it's okay for you to keep Doggy." He looked up with anger in his eyes at Sister Barbara. "Isn't that right, sister?" he snapped. She didn't answer. He looked back at me and again softened. "And if anybody hurts you here, you call me, all right?" "All right," I mumbled. "Good." He hugged me very carefully, then straightened up. "So long, son," he said, and left. Sister Barbara didn't say a word. She just pointed to the door she wanted me to go through and returned to her office. In the weeks that followed, Sister Barbara never bothered me. She didn't speak to me or order me around. I was allowed to sleep with Doggy. I kept Sergeant Pierce Mager's phone number with me all the time. Rooster Peter and I played together most of the time. When we didn't, I sat by the tree with Doggy and looked over the tops of the tall trees and thought about Stevie and Mark and Mom and home. I always kind of hoped that Stevie would come back so that I could tell him about Sarge. I was sure that Sarge would help him. One afternoon, I was by the tree when I saw a car coming up the driveway. I wondered who it might be. A new kid, maybe, or an old one coming back. Either way, it was their beginning. I didn't envy them. The car stopped. Mom got out of the car. I leapt to my feet and ran as fast as I could to her. I reached her and fell into her open arms and cried. She hadn't died after all.